In a world where noise replaces clarity, where chasing others becomes the norm, it is time to remember this. Your power does not lie out there. It begins within. The moment you stop chasing validation, affection, comparison, or attention, you start awakening the most powerful force you possess, your authentic self. You are not behind anyone. You are not late. The truth is, you were never meant to compete. You were meant to awaken. Growth is not in speed, it's in stillness. Power is not in control, it's in alignment. Freedom is not in approval, it's in self-acceptance. The one who focuses inward will find more treasure than the one who hunts for applause. The journey to inner power begins with one decision. Stop running outward. Start walking inward. You are not here to chase. You are here to create, to know, to become. When you focus on yourself, not selfishly, but deeply, you return to your center. From this center, purpose flows, peace grows, and power radiates. Let this be the day you stop seeking and start discovering the power that was always waiting inside you. Shadow integration. Shadow integration is the courageous act of facing the parts of ourselves we've spent our entire lives avoiding. These are the aspects that make us uncomfortable, ashamed or afraid, traits we suppress, emotions we bury, or impulses we reject, because they don't align with the image we want to present to the world. Yet, it's within these very shadows that our deepest healing, transformation, and power reside. Most people spend their lives trying to be good, according to external standards. They focus on being agreeable, positive, or perfect, and in doing so, they exile what they believe is unacceptable. Anger, envy, fear, selfishness. These become the dark fragments we push away. But what we fail to understand is that by pushing them away, we don't erase them. We only drive them deeper into our unconscious, where they gain strength and subtly begin to control our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors from behind the scenes. The shadow is not evil, it's misunderstood. It is simply the unaccepted parts of the self. When we judge a part of ourselves as unworthy or bad, we split. That split is the beginning of inner conflict. Over time we develop a persona, the mask we wear in public, and we distance ourselves from everything that threatens this image. But no one can truly be whole while living in denial of who they are. Integrating the shadow means turning toward that rejected self with curiosity instead of fear, with compassion instead of condemnation. It means asking yourself why certain emotions trigger you, why particular people irritate you, or why you feel guilt for desires that are entirely human. These reactions often signal the presence of shadow content. Instead of running, pause, observe. What are these parts trying to tell you? What lessons have they carried, waiting for acknowledgement? When you stop judging and start listening, you realize that the shadow isn't here to harm you. It holds your untapped potential. The anger you suppress may contain assertiveness you need. The envy you feel might point to your unlived dreams. The fear you hide could be the gateway to profound wisdom. Everything in your shadow is a clue to something essential about you, something you've denied but need in order to grow. This process is not easy. To face your shadow is to meet the raw truth of who you are. It will humble you. It may break you down before it builds you back up. But it is real, and it is powerful, because only when you stop pretending to be someone you're not can you begin to become who you really are. Shadow work invites radical responsibility. It requires you to stop blaming others for your pain and start owning the part you play in your own suffering. But in this ownership, you also reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of your unconscious patterns and start becoming the conscious creator of your life. Integration doesn't mean acting on every shadow impulse. It means understanding. It means giving it a voice. not control. And through this understanding, you develop emotional maturity, depth, and self-respect. You no longer fear your darkness, because you have befriended it. In truth, there is no light without shadow, and no transformation without truth. The person who has integrated their shadow walks with authenticity and strength, not because they are perfect, but because they are whole. When you make peace with your hidden self, you unlock a source of energy and freedom that can never come from chasing the light alone. The mirror principle. The mirror principle is the idea that the people and situations we encounter in life reflect aspects of our own inner world. It suggests that what we admire, dislike, or react strongly to in others is often a projection of something within ourselves, something we either value and aspire to, or something we have not yet accepted or acknowledged. This principle is not about blame, but awareness. It offers a powerful tool for self-discovery, revealing that the outer world can act as a mirror for the unconscious parts of our psyche. When we meet someone who triggers us, irritates us, or stirs an emotional reaction, it's easy to believe that it's solely because of their behavior. But when we apply the mirror principle, we are invited to look deeper. Why does that particular trait provoke us? Is it something we secretly possess but don't want to admit? Is it a quality we were taught to reject? Or is it a fear we carry, projected onto the other person because it's too uncomfortable to own ourselves? These questions don't always lead to comfortable answers, but they lead to truth. And truth is what sets us free. Just as our judgments of others reflect unresolved aspects of ourselves, so too do our positive projections. When we deeply admire someone's courage, creativity, or compassion, it often points to qualities within us that are yearning to be expressed. These projections aren't illusions, they're reminders of our potential. The mirror doesn't just show us our wounds, it reveals our gifts. The beauty we see in another is the beauty we are capable of living, if only we claim it. This principle becomes most transformative when we stop asking, "Why are they like this?" and start asking, "What is this showing me about myself?" If someone is controlling, do I feel powerless? If someone is judgmental, do I still carry harsh inner critics from my past? If someone is free-spirited, am I longing for freedom in my own life? Each interaction becomes a chance to learn something important about who we are, and what we still need to heal, integrate, or reclaim. It takes humility and courage to use life as a mirror. It's easier to point fingers than to turn inward. But the more we avoid looking within, the more we unconsciously repeat patterns, attract similar dynamics, and remain trapped in reactive behavior. True growth begins when we shift the focus from others to ourselves, not in a self-centered way, but in a self-aware way. We begin to recognize that every trigger is a teacher, every admiration is a message, and every challenge is a call to deepen our understanding of the self. The mirror principle also fosters compassion. When we recognize that others are often reflecting pain, fear, or unresolved parts of themselves, we stop taking things so personally. We become less reactive, more understanding. We learn to meet people where they are, because we've begun to meet ourselves where we are. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse or unhealthy behavior. It means recognizing that everyone is in some way projecting, just as we are, and that healing begins when we take responsibility for our reflections. The outer world is not separate from the inner world. It is a manifestation of it. The mirror is not an enemy, it is an invitation. Every relationship, every conflict, and every praise contains information. The more honestly we look into the mirror, the more whole we become. We stop living in reaction and start living in reflection. And in doing so, we step into a more conscious, empowered version of ourselves. One that understands that the path to peace and clarity is not found in fixing others, but in understanding what they reflect within us. Individuation over conformity. Individuation over conformity is the path of becoming who you truly are, rather than who the world expects you to be. It is a journey that demands inner honesty, self-reflection, and the courage to break away from societal molds. Conformity is easy. It offers the comfort of belonging, the safety of approval, and the illusion of security. But it comes at the cost of individuality, purpose, and inner truth. Individuation, on the other hand, is the often difficult process of discovering, embracing, and embodying your authentic self, even if it sets you apart from the crowd. From a young age, we are conditioned to fit into systems, family, school, religion, culture. We learn quickly what is acceptable and what is not. We internalize the values of those around us and shape our identities around them. We become what others need us to be: the good child, the obedient student, the agreeable partner, the productive worker. Over time, these roles become masks. We forget where they end, and we begin. Conformity then becomes not just an action, but a way of being, a silent sacrifice of our uniqueness for the sake of approval. But within every person lies a deeper self, an inner voice that whispers of passions, dreams, intuitions, and truths that often do not align with external expectations. This is the self that longs for expression, the one that senses when life feels hollow or disconnected. Individuation is the process of listening to that voice, honoring it, and gradually aligning your outer life with your inner reality. It is not rebellion for its own sake, but a conscious divergence toward authenticity. Individuation requires awareness of the ways we have unconsciously conformed. It begins with asking hard questions. Whose life am I living? Whose values am I serving? What beliefs have I accepted without questioning? What parts of myself have I hidden, denied, or silenced to fit in? These inquiries bring discomfort because they unsettle the identities we've built. But they also open the door to freedom, the freedom to choose who we want to be. This process is not linear. There are setbacks and moments of doubt. The pull to conform remains strong, especially when individuation leads to disapproval or isolation. But staying true to yourself ultimately brings a deeper kind of peace, one rooted not in pleasing others, but in living in integrity with your soul. You begin to understand that authenticity might cost you certain relationships or roles, but what you gain is far more valuable: clarity, vitality, and a sense of alignment with your life's true direction. Individuation also brings wholeness. While conformity splits us into acceptable and unacceptable parts, public and private selves, individuation seeks integration. It asks you to embrace your complexities, to make peace with your contradictions, to own your strengths and your flaws alike. You no longer need to hide behind a mask or contort yourself to fit in. You become more real, more grounded, more alive. And in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. Choosing individuation over conformity is an act of courage in a world that rewards sameness. It is a journey of becoming rather than obeying. It does not reject connection or community, but seeks connection built on truth, not performance. It is not about being different just to stand out. It's about being honest enough to not pretend. You were not born to blend in. You were born to unfold into the full truth of who you are. And that unfolding, though difficult, is the most sacred journey you will ever take. Stillness is inner strength. ChatGPT In a world obsessed with movement, speed, and constant productivity, stillness can appear weak, passive, or even wasteful. Yet true stillness is not the absence of action, it is the presence of depth. It is not stagnation, but rootedness. To be still is to stand firm in the eye of the storm, to remain unmoved not out of indifference, but from an inner strength that does not need to prove, chase, or dominate. Stillness is the quiet force that holds all chaos without being consumed by it. It is the space where clarity emerges and wisdom rises from within. Inner strength is often mistaken for aggression or control, as if power must always be loud and visible. But the strongest trees are not those that flail in the wind, they are the ones whose roots dig deepest into the earth. Similarly, the strongest individuals are not those who shout their value or force their will, but those who have cultivated a still center, a place within themselves that cannot be shaken by external forces. They are the ones who can pause, reflect, and respond instead of reacting from fear or impulse. Stillness allows for this kind of strength because it brings you back to yourself. In stillness, the noise of the world fades and the voice of the soul becomes audible. You begin to hear what truly matters. You notice the truths beneath appearances. In the quiet, you can no longer run from your pain, but you can also no longer run from your power. Everything becomes visible. Your wounds, your gifts, your fears, your longings. Stillness does not flatter the ego. It reveals the truth, and that truth, once embraced, becomes your foundation. Stillness is where healing begins. When you stop running from discomfort, you create space to feel it, to face it, and to understand it. You realize that not every fire needs to be put out, not every opinion needs to be answered, and not every storm requires your participation. From stillness comes discernment, an inner compass that allows you to act not from panic or conditioning, but from purpose. Your energy becomes deliberate, and your presence carries weight not because you are loud, but because you are grounded. There is also a sacred dimension to stillness. It is the space where the self meets the eternal, where the mind softens and the soul breathes. In stillness, time loosens its grip, and you can feel your connection to something greater, something beyond roles, achievements, or expectations. Whether you call it spirit, truth, or simply awareness, stillness connects you to that vast silent intelligence within and around you. And from that connection flows peace, not as escape, but as understanding. To cultivate stillness in a world of distraction is an act of rebellion and devotion. It is a practice that requires patience, not perfection. You do not become still overnight. You learn to return to yourself again and again, to breathe through the noise, to listen beneath the surface. In doing so, you reclaim your power. You become less influenced by external pressures and more aligned with your internal values. You begin to live from the inside out, rather than being shaped from the outside in. Stillness is not inaction. It is the condition from which the right action arises. It is not weakness. It is the strength that endures. To be still is to be conscious. To be conscious is to be free. And in that freedom, you discover the immense strength that lives not in your ability to dominate the world, but in your willingness to meet it with presence, patience, and deep-rooted clarity. Withdraw projection. Projection is the unconscious act of assigning our own emotions, fears, desires, or traits onto others. It is how the psyche protects itself from truths it is not yet ready to face. Rather than owning a shadow part of ourselves, our anger, envy, insecurity, or longing, we see it in someone else and react to them as if they were the problem. Projection is not just a psychological error, it is a profound invitation. For what we project onto others holds the key to what remains unclaimed within us. To withdraw projection is to begin the journey back to wholeness. Most of us move through the world believing that our judgments are about others, that our irritations are justified by the actions of those around us. We say, "He's so arrogant," or "She's needy," without pausing to ask what these reactions are showing us about our own inner state. The psyche does not randomly assign traits to others, it selects the ones that are active or disowned within ourselves. If someone's arrogance enrages you, it may reflect your own denied desire to express power or confidence. If you feel overwhelmed by another's vulnerability, it may touch a softness in you that you've been taught to hide. Withdrawing projection requires courage and humility. It is not comfortable to admit that the world we react to is, in many ways, a mirror of our internal landscape. But doing so gives us power. When you stop blaming others and start asking, "What in me is being reflected by this situation?" you move from victimhood to self-awareness. You begin to retrieve parts of yourself that were cast into the shadow long ago, parts that now beg for integration. The process begins with awareness. When you feel a strong emotional charge, especially one that seems out of proportion, pause, ask yourself why this person or behavior bothers you so deeply. What is it touching in you? What story does it activate? You may find it echoes an old wound, a forgotten need, or a part of yourself you were never allowed to express. The more you trace these reactions back to the root, the more you reclaim your power. This is not to say that everyone we encounter is innocent or that harmful behavior should be tolerated. Rather, it's about disentangling your inner material from the outer experience. When you withdraw projection, you no longer give others control over your emotional state. You become less reactive and more reflective. You respond with clarity instead of confusion. You see people more as they are, not as screens for your unresolved stories. Withdrawing projection is an act of psychological maturity. It is a movement from blame to responsibility, from distortion to truth. It does not mean suppressing emotion or avoiding conflict. It means taking ownership of your inner life and allowing your relationships to become sites of transformation rather than repetition. Every projection withdrawn is a piece of the soul retrieved, a fragment returned from exile. In this process, you become more whole. You begin to see that the traits you despise in others are often your own unlived potentials or unhealed wounds. You learn that your anger, when owned, becomes clarity. Your envy becomes inspiration. Your fear becomes a gateway to depth. By taking back what you had cast onto others, you awaken the hidden power within yourself. Ultimately, to withdraw projection is to come home to yourself. It is to take responsibility for your inner world, and in doing so, find freedom. You no longer need the world to behave a certain way to feel safe or validated. You carry your center within, and from that center you see the world not through the lens of illusion, but through the clarity of a soul that is learning, growing, and integrating everything it once tried to deny. Purpose comes from wholeness. Purpose is not something you find by striving, achieving, or chasing success. It arises from within as a natural expression of who you are when you become whole. It is not a task handed down by the world, nor is it merely a career, role, or ambition. True purpose does not come from filling a void. It emerges when the void is no longer avoided, when the broken pieces of the self are acknowledged, felt, and gradually. Wholeness is the soil from which purpose grows, not perfection, but a deep acceptance of every part of your being. Many seek purpose by running to. They look for answers in titles, accomplishments, or external approval, hoping that something out there will make their life meaningful. But this external search often leads to exhaustion, because it bypasses the inner fragmentation that quietly undermines every success. Without self-integration, achievements feel hollow, and even the most admired lives feel like performances. Purpose, in contrast, feels like alignment. It is not about doing more. It is about becoming more honest, more real, more fully yourself. To become whole is to face the parts of yourself you've rejected, the shadowy aspects you were taught to hide or fear, the rage, the grief, the need, the insecurity, the wildness. These parts are not mistakes. They are exiled pieces of your humanity, cast out in the name of survival or conformity. As long as they remain in the dark, you will feel like something is missing, no matter how much you achieve. But when you begin to turn inward and welcome these fragments, you move toward integration. You begin to reclaim your soul. This reclamation is not neat or easy. It requires discomfort. It asks you to be honest about your wounds, your defenses, and the ways you've abandoned yourself. But it is through this raw, real inner work that you make space for purpose to arise. Purpose is not found in avoidance. It is born in the fire of self-confrontation and the tenderness of self-acceptance. It lives where the false self dies, not violently, but through truth. Wholeness does not mean that you become flawless or immune to suffering. It means you are no longer at war with yourself. It means you've stopped trying to fit into a mold and have begun listening to the quiet voice beneath the noise, the voice of your true nature, which has been waiting patiently to be heard. This voice knows what matters to you. It knows what kind of life would feel meaningful. Not because it's impressive to others, but because it resonates with your soul. When you are whole, your actions align with your essence. You no longer chase purpose like a goal. You express it naturally, moment by moment, through how you live, love, and create. You might express it through teaching, parenting, building, healing, writing, listening. It is not the role that defines purpose, but the presence you bring to it. When you are whole, every part of your life becomes infused with meaning. Even the ordinary moments. You don't need to escape your life to feel purposeful. You need to inhabit it more fully. In a fragmented world, choosing wholeness is an act of rebellion and healing. It is a return to your innate wisdom. The more of yourself you embrace, the clearer your path becomes. Not because the path was hidden, but because you were too divided to walk it with clarity. Purpose is not something you construct. It is something you uncover, like a sculpture within a stone, waiting to be revealed as you chip away all that is not you. And so, if you are lost or unsure, do not look outside yourself for purpose. Look within. Tend to the inner fractures. Speak with your forgotten parts. Bring light to the darkness you carry. In doing so, you move toward wholeness. And from that wholeness, your true purpose will begin to speak.